This is Shirley with Spirit of Matter. And we are actually on a Jupiter night and Mercury hour. So, not only that, the midheaven is ruled by Mercury in 4 degrees Virgo. And the ascendant is, of course, Mars ruled, because why not? And Mars is conjuncting Deneb Algedi. So, yeah, which is kind of like an entire thing in itself. So Hill Deneb Algedi, the wealth redistributor and the boundary setter um, of Aquarius fixed star. And Mercury is right now 13 degrees Aries. Topic of the day is Mercury. Luna is in 5 degrees Cancer. Um, yeah, and I titled this episode Mercury Doing Things because that's what's up. Okay, Mercury is ingressed into Aries, and we all began to be loud and outspoken, and you know, talking first, thinking later. It doesn't mean it's not smart communication or wise communication. It's just that people are just letting loose. Okay, with anything that they deliver. And we're about to have this Mercury conjunct in Rahu and Chiron, and I want to address them one by one before I join them together. So first of all, Rahu. When something conjuncts Rahu, Rahu is the hunger, okay? Rahu is where you haven't been there. You haven't been there yet. But it's not just you haven't been there yet, you're eager to go, maybe afraid. But this is where your soul is headed. You're destined to explore this place, also in your natal chart. And this is why, different cultures, for example, Vedic traditions would treat Rahu as kind of malefic because if you have desire, then you get caught up in the wheel of incarnation. But it doesn't mean that you shouldn't explore this desire. On the contrary, it is a part of you. You're fated to do that, but it's considered malefic because it connects you with this real world. Okay, but then there's also the place where, if you think about a child that just begins to walk, then it tries again, and the telos is for the child to walk. So the child hasn't been there yet in walking, and it desires to go. There's nothing bad about walking or desiring to walk, okay? But when you have, not bad, and when you have a planet conjuncting Rahu, you get the signification of the planet, which right now is going to be Mercury, with that hunger, okay? It desires to go there. What is Mercury? Mercury rules communication, it rules trade, it rules the exchange of things, so also delivery, and thereby also vehicles and technology. Cars, for example, is Venus, which is very associated with vehicles by connecting things. Mercury is about the doorway, okay, or the window, the gate. Before we had like Pluto, we would think of Mercury as the psychopomp. So when a soul exits, Mercury or Hermes would accompany this soul on its journey. Okay, so it really is all that deep. It also rules children and childlike curiosity. Remember when a child tries to walk and it kind of plays and it explores motion and it falls and it tries again. This is Mercury, okay? Because Jupiter also rules children, expansion and optimism, okay? So it's different facets of children. Now we get those significations with Rahu. It tells us that if Rahu in Aries is talkative, outspoken, impulsive, but also witty and have these kind of like lightning strikes, bring it together with Rahu, it gets even bigger. And this is where you're expected to say whatever has been on your mind. Okay, it happens every year when Mercury crosses Rahu. If you pinpoint this transits, you'll see it. But also, where you know that when I do my forecasts, I address kind of the times where you are expected to let loose, also money wise. And this is one of these times you might want to invest in something that's completely new. You might want to buy, to purchase something, and you're going to be doing this way big. Okay, and this is throughout like the entire week or so, because Mercury moves relatively fast, but you can already feel this amping up and this desire to go and whether spend your money or have a new platform, whether it's social media or new technology, something you haven't done before, somewhere you haven't been before, and something you have not expressed before. Okay, those are going to be big. And it is in Aries, so it's relating. You're going to want to communicate either your identity to people, your whatever you associate with the I am. Okay, you might want to communicate that, or might want wherever Aries is in your chart, you might want that to be even more so expressive of the I am through the exchange of words, communication, trade, childlike curiosity, skill, and so on. So it's very, very strong, and you can see that there are going to be a lot of ego clashes because everybody's communication is associated with the I am. So the way you communicate, you might have an attachment to it as if it is your identity. Somebody tells you, be more nice, be more polite when you address this topic. It will get you more places. People listen. So no, this is how I talk. Okay, even if you weren't, especially if you weren't the type. Especially if you weren't that type, because it's not accentuating on your proneness so much as it's where you haven't been before. So a lot of people are going to express things they never expressed in regarding to the Aries place in their lives. And they're going to also humor. Mercury rules humor, so you might be enchanted by humor you haven't found funny before, but maybe some of you will write satire at this time if you weren't doing that, especially if you weren't doing that. Okay, and you have to understand that Rahu is a node of the moon that is activated by eclipses, and we're in the shade of an eclipse. It is fated. What comes up for you to speak about, I began to speak about abolishing expendable children. But yours might be lighter. What comes for you to speak about is fated. You're fated to go in this way, at least for the time being. It doesn't mean it will be forever. It's just a transit. Yes, it's not your natal chart. But right now, the energy is shifting so that you are saying these things, buying these things, selling these things, communicating in this way, using this manner of technology. I found myself on Mastodon again because I was like, I don't know, Twitter is funny. But that is also exploring means of communication. Now I want to join Chiron before I go over to the retrogrades. I want to join Chiron because Mercury will be conjuncting Rahu and Chiron. Chiron, we know, is the wounded healer. What does it mean to be the wounded healer around communication and the sense of identity? One thing that comes to mind is neurodivergence. You think about a person's identity, linked with a nervous system based, so also Mercury, language, nervous system, communication, language, yes, in a way that a word, Mercury, is representative of the I am. So Mercury is very associated with that, with the I am, right? The word that comes after the I am. So the word neurodivergent, and Aries also rules the head. So maybe some people are going to redefine themselves as neurodivergent, but it can also be the other way around. It can also be, hey, I found actually a Twitter post about someone that says that autism is not a disorder. And there was someone who's arguing and saying, I don't feel like my autism is disorder, but I wouldn't say to other people how to define, the place of autism in their lives. And so it's those type of conversations. It doesn't have to happen through claiming something a disorder. But definitely there's going to be an exploration of words and identities. Okay, on a mundane level, we are going to explore new identities. So, for example, there's this meme running that the future does not belong to globalism; it belongs to patriotism, meaning nationalism. Okay, descendant to the Second World War. I'm like, we've been there, guys. We've been there. We should go deeper than that. But there is also tribalism. Okay, there are a lot of unities, and the I am on a political level that adjoins the individual identity. So people will be exploring places they haven't been yet with that. Okay, this is where my reverence to Black leaders came today on Twitter, because I'm like, hey, these people actually explored being under colonialism, liberating the self, maintaining the identity, and addressing the inner issues in the society before colonialism, talking about not only Mandela, but also Black women that I see broadcasting, like Angela Samana Mubiru, who talked in this Woman Day about women in Africa, where she comes from, and the fact that I saw a couple of, then of course the algorithm will show a couple of women, African women that discuss this. You say, hey, we're not raised, we're raised in one, and all the ladies said they're as the servants. Okay, so these things breed colonialism. These things breed a lot of things, and that was where I kind of ran into it in my life as a Western raised person who sees the threats of fundamentalism and says, no, we need to abolish our praxis of expendable children. And then, so not to be a match to this, and so to have the right to exit extremism and fundamentalism. Yes, and then I talked about this also in terms of housing and so on. But this is a place whoever you are, you're going to be exploring a place you haven't been before. And for those of you who have not been patriotic, some of you are going to be patriotic, and some of it is fated. Okay, so we also need to remember that everybody has their life journey. We need to tend to ours, right? And so some of you are going to be patriotic, some of you are going to be non-nationalist. Okay, some of you are maybe at the polar point, maybe even some Ukrainian people or even Palestinian people who've seen everybody waves their flag. When they need help, it actually doesn't arrive. Or it arrives like from Israelis or like, really weird stuff. So this is where a person can say, well, I'm no longer a nationalist. Okay, some of you might explore places you haven't been to before with this, and this can hit everybody because this is an identity issue, and the words play a big part in this. So the isms, okay, the isms play a big part in the identity. Aries is the individual, but on a mundane level, of course, what is the place of the nation state, globalism, the tribe that I grew up in my personal identity? What needs to change, and so on and so forth? You're meant to deal with what comes up. Chiron is dealing with a wound around this identity. Okay, so this is where it's about, yes, people are on a personal level, people are going to be triggered by words, but where is this trigger coming from? It's coming from something that goes against the identity of a person. There's a wound around being holding this and taking this into your identity. Okay, when somebody says to me nationalist, I'm a nationalist. I'm third generation to the Second World War. This word brings something, right? Or when somebody says, use a certain medical diagnosis for something that I don't think is an issue of the person, but is issue of the connection with the environment, it would stir up certain stuff, okay? Like that thing with the autism, like is it a disorder? Is it not a disorder? It's those type of things, and they are to do with the identity. And for every person, it can be completely different. For example, I'm very flexible around my gender, and it's literally a non-issue for me. So I have no problem to joke about like pronouns, or I don't always remember like my own pronouns, and or to laugh from jokes about the plane that identifies safe. Okay, because I find it satirical, I find it funny. Another person could comment this from a place that is completely different, and that would stir up things. Okay, this is where chiron comes into the show. We are scheduled to encounter a new awareness of a wound around identity. Somebody's going to say something, we are going to say something, it's going to pop a trigger. Okay? It's just so true. And it's fated because what does the conjunction mean? Conjunction, something ends, and at the same time something begins. It's a synodic cycle. Mercury goes around Rahu, and that goes around Chiron. So you are letting go of an old wound around your identity. Chiron's been in Aries, okay? And you're encountering a new one. Very simple. It's very simple, actually, okay? Think about if somebody would call you a name and it would piss you so much, you're letting this go, you've healed from that. You might even encounter a person who says that, and then somebody says something else and you're like, oh shit. Now that's an issue. Both of them are facets of your identity. And this is one of the ways in which things can arise. So starting on a new journey and a new approach to tending to the wound around identity. Okay, so let's take the neurodivergent case. Maybe you said, oh, I accept this, I call myself neurodivergent, and this is a framework that I work with. And then you hit this guy and you're like, the fuck? I am not in a disorder, I am not sick. You people are putting so much strain on the nervous system that causes inflammation, that causes this reaction, and I'm supposed to agree with saying, I'm neurodivergent, I'm oversensitive, I'm this, no. Okay, and something that hasn't bothered you before now becomes an itch. You begin a new cycle of how you address this, okay? Because if you're no longer willing to accept like a tagging on you as a disease, now you need to address society. So you might even be on a quest that is more to address those issues, to help people with their own chiron wound around identity. You also need to see what Mercury represents for you, okay? So this is, I think I encountered all of this. Actually, somebody was talking about Alzheimer's. I was like, yes, a lot about Alzheimer's is the healthy nervous system, which is kind of like the food you eat. If you have enough freedom of movement and access to like soil that you can step on, balance your nervous system. And I know it's from CBDSD as well. And they were like, there are people who have all that. And I'm like, well, there was this experiment that we did with that a pack of people just randomly walking into the room. And after we practiced this for a couple of times, we began to walk without colliding into each other. So that was kind of like the neuron experiment. And I was like, oh, there. That correlates with things I learned like from holistic medicine, just the way of kind of like the bigger picture and how everything interrelates. And you cannot expect if there's stress on one of the people, is going to be felt, and the system is going to try to kind of work around this or release this inflammation in various ways. Okay, so people are like, and I'm like, I can't, like, you know, you can't take a pill to silence and repress nature. It's not the function of pills within. Like if you take a pill, like you say, I set my intention to deal with that, but I need help. Okay, then you will find maybe the more correct pill for you to deal with that. But most what you're marketed today is not medicine. There is medicine. There is life-saving medicine that can make a person who is terminally ill in cancer go into full remission. Yes, of course, it's not marketed. So this is not yes about medicine, but it's all those issues, kind of like the nervous system. With Mercury Chiron, if you have any wound around purchases or investments, you know, kind of like maybe even investments that are in some way tied to your identity. You spend money on this, and this is a part of your identity. Try to think where did identity got me at my wallet? Okay. Where do I spend so much money on something that later becomes my identity? And this is, you're going to be encountering that. So you might be letting go of an old identity, and it's going to be expressing itself in your purchases, but also in your skill. You might be re-encountering a certain skill that you've had. Think also about 18, 17 years ago. What were you making a living off of then? You might go and revisit that, but with smaller, Mercury is small things, okay? Smaller, and the less is more. So you think about branding, you think about giving a word to something, you think about the way you want to make an income, maybe dividends, maybe royalties, and something that sets you free, okay? That you can have your identity in that relation. So with Mercury, it might be a person of the word, okay? I use this term a lot. Okay, I'm a person of the word, I'm from a family of people of the word. People of the word, yeah, okay? People of the word is something that's very, I certainly have natal Mercury in Aries. So it steers in deep relational identity wounds and connection. Okay, so this is like, oh, when I do this, this is me. I know how to do this. Okay, this is also where you may run into a wound around ableism. Mercury, because it is skills, so language. So think about ableism, language, which can also say how it expresses for me. I can speak in German. There's a region called Baden-Württemberg, and they say, wir können alles außer Hochdeutsch. And Hochdeutsch is basically High Deutsch, is basically the language spoken in all the regions. And they're like, we can we can do everything but speak Hochdeutsch. So to me, it happens actually with my fatherland's language, Netherlands. I can listen to the language. I understand the language. When I was born and raised in Israel, when I try to speak the language, like most Israelis, we sound German. So I never know which is more embarrassing to try, and something in German would come up. It's just the weirdest thing ever, incredibly satirical when you think about this. And and that's just life for me. So I could speak English, then I would think about Dutch and my accent would change. But if I try to speak Dutch, it's very weird. It's just a weird language feature that I have. Um, so this is a wound around language that has to do with identity. And where is it happen? The country that most requires you to speak the language. You speak the language to people who will soften up to you, will warm up to you. But if you don't, yeah, there was a time when my housing depended on that. And I was like, how do I express? Okay, so this is really an ableistic wound. And me was a person that would have the accent of every language. Like the people I remember reading Arabic and not understanding what I am reading, and people in the class laughed because at the time an Arab person or something like that, because it sounded Arab. Same with Russian, same with English. I had American people telling me, like, asking me where did I grow up. Um, so and so on. Very weird things. So all kinds of strange anomalies around language expression, um, and they can be tied to your identity, okay, in some way. Chiron brings a wound there. Now, Aries is, of course, Mars ruled. Right now, Mars is in Aquarius. So there is these issues about Mercury Mars, okay? When Mars was in Mercury sign in Gemini, sharp words flying around. Gemini is very witty, okay? And so here we have another version on this, okay? Words are flying off quickly, and those are sharp words. And this is where you can lift the person up, or you can, if your words meet people in an angle that is not complementary to their moon, this can really be bad. And since we're not walking with synastries around each other, okay, when you have public figures, you have synastries, but how much do you communicate with public figures? When you have people around you that you go to work with and this and that, you don't hold a pack of synastries like, oh, my Mars and Mercury meet your moon in that and that angle, and oh, we better, watch out. So this is where people can really be intolerant with each other, but also be Aries, which means that you have come across as abrasive, aggressive, and you are just passionate. Okay, a lot of the Mercury Mars is about passion. For women, it's still the issue of, no, I'm not being how should you say it, like overreacting. Okay, it's like if a woman is expressing a boundary, you're angry. No, I'm just expressing my boundary. um, and so maybe it is the right to be angry for you, okay, to express your anger, and perhaps learn a constructive way to do that. And it's going to be worded communication around this. But there can also be, Chiron is the wounded healer. You might find the exact right words to tackle something, and it can be a word, okay? Because Aries is so identity related, it can be a word that describes, that can come after the I am. So I cannot say be very mindful of what you put after the I am, because Aries is mindful but is impulsive. And my approach to these things is not try to think twice before you speak. My approach to these things is to have radical acceptance. And if you know somebody that you meet them by the moon, okay, like your Mars or your Mercury, or it's kind of like, or this transit is kind of like meeting them by the moon, maybe right now is not the best time to converse. Okay, they might not be meeting your words in a good place. If it is in a synastry, then this can be at the heart of a lot of communication issues. But this is also kind of like fated. So being compassionate with yourself, radical acceptance here is more so than try to think twice before you. It's not Aries. Here we go to the identity thing. It's not that they cannot tend to that or cannot try to do this. It's just that, yes, try to do this, absolutely. But the way to get that in many cases is just to radically accept this facet in you, and understanding that if I'm the type of person who is sharply expressing themselves, then I need a type of person who is okay with that manner of speech. So so think about woke culture versus a very European type of culture where you speak everything that you think to the person. You just speak it, and you're blunt, and you say it in their face, and then you think about, kind of like a woke American person being incredibly shocked that could even occur. And so because especially when it's not done by a person who's trying to bully you, it's just their matter of speech, and they're not saying stupid things, like sexist things, or like, no, they're just saying truths, but in ways that really sound abrasive to you. So this is where you really want to be aware that those things can occur. Be aware of cultural clashes, and where culture can be so much ingrained in the person that is the I am. One of the greatest cultural clashes I had is Israel. We say a lot of I, was with a person who said a lot of we. I didn't understand what we are talking about, because you cannot really generalize about people. I said, well, people. I said people. I said people. Like, why is he being so dogmatic about people? You don't even know people. People are different. You can only speak about yourself. Where does you speak about yourself? You came from a place where to speak about yourself would be considered selfish. I had near did, DID, near full-blown deed after this interaction. Okay, it's not just because of that, yes, but this was completely not easy to communicate in this way. And this is culture. Okay, this is a culture to a language. So there's a person that there is no I, and then there's a person that there is I. Or when Ketu was in Aries, I was in Model UN, and then you represent the country. You don't say, I say, you say, if you say you're Iran, Iran says. And it's not just of course, if you're in Israel, you would get Iran, you would get Iraq, Germany, and so on. And Palestine, and of course, immediately you get Israel. It's like that's how it works, and there is no I. So the joke was it's like I don't exist. That was we literally had a sign that said I don't exist for the judges whenever somebody says I in Model UN. Okay, so this was with Keto in Aries. Now Rahu is in Aries, everybody says I. But the positive thing about this, not at all a biased statement, but positively biased, is that the I is more important than the words around the I. And that can go beyond any definition. Okay? So people definitely are going to tend to themselves or tend to where the I has been wounded. There was no I, was not comfortable to express the I, or there was ableism around the I and the expression of the I, whether it's the skill in communication, in words, okay, so how to communicate. I am, how to communicate. I don't know, okay, and so those things, because sometimes you don't think about the I so much. The I am. It's monish, you walk in the world, and yes, and usually people are like, oh, I work in this and this place, I'm married to so and so, I'm a husband, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a this, I'm a that. Okay, so we are tending to that I big time. And now I want to talk about the retrograde a little bit, because Mercury is very active in Aries and it will also be retrograding. So we're gonna see when does Mercury enter its retrograde motion. It's going to happen in April. So one good thing about March, we have this eclipse. We don't have to deal with Mercury retrograde. It will be retrograde on the April eclipse. So, but let's be optimistic. And Mercury is beginning its retrograde movement on April 2nd. This is where we end a long time of all planets going direct. And now April 2nd, Mercury turns retrograde. What does it mean, first of all, in general? We are breaking the tide of direct motion. Everything was moving so fast, so forward. And maybe it's not a bad thing if you think about, let's say, the progress of Israel towards Rafiah, going through like the entire Gaza Strip and moving and progressing. Okay, maybe a little bit of a halt, a slowdown for all sides involved is kind of like, hey, we need that. I don't expect that to happen with this Mercury yet. But Mercury can enforce some stuff. Now, Mercury also is involved with electricity. So you want to be, you want to be informed if you're either in a war zone or just in any zone, that electricity and power cuts can be becoming an issue. We're heading towards the warm season in Israel, so many regions have power cuts even in time of peace. So that can be another issue. So communication, and with Mercury retrograde, as we know, communication cutoffs, things are moving slow around technology, but also words. Yes, so contracts, paperwork. By all means, this March, if you sign your contract now, if you need to renew a contract, if you need to do something again that is contractual, if you do it now, you're pretty much good. I want to see the degrees here. Yes, so in 27, next to my Mercury, in 27 Aries, we're going to have Mercury going retrograde. This happens April 2. Mind you, April 8, we have Mercury, I think, 25 degrees, still retrograde on an eclipse. So this is going to be the eclipse of the exes. So, with Mercury retrograde is communication. And for some godforsaken reason, because Mercury rules like children, it's not, so it's ruling communication, it's ruling jokes, humor, technology, yes. So we get the call, but Mercury retrograde is also very associated with the exes coming into your life, bumping into your ex, and so on. And so we're going to have an eclipse around that. So either we're going to have fated exes come into contact with us, fated communication around our exes. That's what's up. Okay? So going over our relationship is scheduled, but by an eclipse thing, which to me says that the themes that are playing out, even if Pluto wasn't being playing with these nodes, it was playing more with the March eclipse, is true, than with the April one. But Neptune and Venus do. So, for example, one thing I already began to see was just somebody who's commenting on something not at all related to the topic, and I just looked at their page and I was like, they're communicating about like the twin flame issues, and I'm like, haven't we been through this? I once tried to do the trick of setting twin flames are just a functioning relationship, a healthy relationship, kind of like reclaim and redefine the term. Even that did not age well. So, like, I tried. So, but Neptune is going to be with Venus. Okay, so around the eclipse, definitely the theme of, with all the world war going on, definitely the theme of exes and conversations with the exes, maybe a disillusionment, but also being, the Neptune work, being with the void, okay? So it tells me that what people are going to be dealing with around these exes coming in, those fated issues, they are to do with identity. So you want to think about, and what if that guy was actually gay? Okay, so this person that always, I don't know, the person that you think maybe cheated on you, maybe this, maybe that, what was on with them, or the person that denied you sex, this narcissist, and so on, they were gay. Okay, so one thing that can come up with identity, and Mercury is playing with polar opposites. So one thing was, yes, they were gay. Another thing was, I can see where, I don't know, where my identity issues were coming to the forefront with this connection, kind of like have a completion cycle. And it also has to do with words. Okay, for example, calling each other certain names. Okay, this definitely, but this is not on a personal level. With Neptune, Venus Neptune, it's something that is an intergenerational thing. I suspect it's going to be this whole Jupiter-Uranus on the way. It's going to have to do with like religion as well. So a lot of things that can be tied to that. So that's one thing that Mercury is scheduled to do. It's going to be bringing those X's issues, X's and O's, but with a big O, okay, because it's going to be ecliptic. Mercury is going to be with Aries when this happens. So you want to think about thinking how are we more inclusive in our relational teachings, relational talks, how we think about our relationships, identity and relationships, and so on and so forth. But it's just something fated is going to happen. And it can be a fated eureka. It doesn't have to be a fated encounter. It's not impossible. Also, relationships that begin at this time, they begin with the Mercury retrograde timestamp. You're probably fated to have this relationship. You're also probably fated to leave these relationships somewhere in the future. Not sure, but you wouldn't marry on a Venus retrograde. You wouldn't marry on a Mercury retrograde either. No. I'm the type of person who accepts the sky. Okay? I'm not going to tell you, hey, would you try to not spend money on when that Venus is squaring your Neptune? Accept the sky. Prepare for the sky. We can try to do remediation. If it works, fine. We're not going to put all of our balls in that very liquid pocket. So now let's see what else is Mercury going to do during. Well, I'm not going to go through like the whole retrograde. That does not mean that April 8th Mercury is not considering still applying to conjunct Chiron, okay? And Aries, mind you. Okay, the April 8th eclipse is one of those eclipses that we've been looking at. Sometimes it's going to be hitting a lot of the United States. The United States is going through a lot. But also the chart of the royal family and Mr. Geert Wilders in Netherlands, as we already see that, as not much needs to be mentioned around that. Mercury is going to conjunct Chiron on the very degree of the April 8th eclipse, this 19 degree. So right after the eclipse, okay, April 8th, then April 15, right after, we have a revisit of the eclipse point by Mercury, with Chiron still present there. There's still a wound around that. We're just revisiting that wound. So then we have April 19. Mercury is going to conjunct Venus in Aries. Okay? And we are already in the Jupiter-Uranus, okay, in Jupiter-Uranus conjunction in 21 degrees Taurus. So Venus is joining the party. She's direct. She is, I believe, invisible at this time. So what we get from Venus is not unless you're doing magic, yes, it's not the material stuff like that. But more, or the relationships in the actual realm, but more like wisdom around relationships, wisdom around all things Venus. How are my relations, my appearance, Venus, is tying to my beauty, my identity? What is the place of being beautiful in my identity? What is the place of my values, Venus, in my identity? And Mercury will be revisiting that. So this is again Mercury retrograde, excess, beauty, the places, could maybe something changed around that. Um, so, and again, you know, Venus, this is after Venus conjunct Rahu. So Venus is exploring a new facet of the relation between anything Venus to your identity, but in the realm of action. Okay. And this is already with Mars very well deep into Pisces. So this is a Mars that blends in with that which it desires. Okay, it's a Mars that merges. So this is April. And right in April 25, Mercury is already going direct. Mercury will be going direct. Yes, with Venus close to the point where it turned retrograde, Venus in 25 degrees. It's going to be on my Mercury. The Mercury is going direct on 15 degrees Aries. Is not going to touch again on Rahu just yet. So we don't have another encounter of Mercury Rahu during its retrograde phase. It's almost there, but not. So what my prediction for this kind of like overall themes that we're going to explore, we're going to explore the almost doesn't count. Okay. almost doesn't count in terms of our relationships, but also in terms of like peace agreements. I think it was Lada that talked about it. Going to try to have peace talk somewhere, and then it may not be coming to fruition. When we have an almost meeting and then changing direction, this is exactly what it is. We're heading somewhere, and we make a U-turn. So you think about, you know, this counter with you encounter the ex, you have changed so much, I have changed so much, maybe we should try again, let's do this, and boom. No, 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 bye. Okay, that can very much be the point of this direction. But this is also when it comes to the mundane world, and we're in a war. So it can be both like a peace agreement, which like we almost signing the peace agreement, or we almost agreeing on that, and then there's a U-turn. Okay, this is the skies. And here I have to say, this is the skies. It's not necessarily like I mean, yes, it can be an orchestrated manipulation that took the skies into account. I have a lot of movies playing out, okay? And they're well directed over 20 years ago in the world. So if we know the skies, then at least we know what is expected. And then you can work your magic with it or do whatever, but at least you know what the skies are like. So for this Mercury retrograde, there's not going to be another meeting with Rahu. There is going to be a meeting with Venus. There's not going to be another meeting with Rahu. So this is where you almost meet your fate, but you don't. And so it can be, but it can have both good and bad connotations. It simply means that it's not fated for you to go on that route again, or to expressing. But also remember that Mercury has visited Rahu. It doesn't need to meet Rahu again. Doesn't need to go through this again. What's coming up now, you're going to continue. So this also means that if somebody tries to retract you, okay, and it kind of brings me back to when I was writing Sugar-Free Lemonade. Before I was writing Sugar-Free Lemonade, I was writing and I was writing and I was writing. I kind of like about the intergenerational phenomena, and so the structure of things and how it needs to change, both for the sake of science and for the sake of the people making science, regardless of gender. And they almost got me to retract. Like, you have to delete all your posts, do this, do that, do that, do that, do that, do that. Do you want to litigate? No, I want to have other things to do, have other things to say. I need to figure for myself these things. Okay, fine. boom, sugar-free lemonade. Okay, that's like this is the thing. Okay, so what Mercury is doing right at its first meeting with Rahu, you're not necessarily meant to retract what you're talking about. Whether it's expandable children, whether it's the identities issues that you're bringing out. Okay, you're not. It's not fated for you to say scrap that, because it's not a scrap that kind of thing. So this can definitely be a part of your identity that you came here to express. With action, and Mars going from Aquarius to Pisces during this time. So you're going from the rational mind to, with Mars Pisces, it can be like a crusade. Okay, so something can be on the process of receiving the crusade mission for you. And this is very coincided with Jupiter Uranus. Okay, Jupiter Uranus here is 22nd degree already, well into the 22nd degree of Taurus, and with Mercury 15 degrees Aries, you're almost touching, you're conjuncting Rahu. Now, yes, you are touching on Rahu, but it's not on the degree. So it doesn't mean that the conjunction doesn't happen. It means that it's not another move on the degree. So there's going to be a lot of things are going to manifest around it, but it's not going to be around the pinnacle or pinpoint of those issues. It's kind of like it's almost there. But then Mercury goes retrograde, it goes direct over these things. And you remember what started when Mercury is conjunct Rahu, applying to conjunct, then going over Rahu. That's going to be a crusade. Now, you got to know what is it. And you also got to know that it's fated. The Me Too, it was fated. I would not go around talking about like man and women. No, I would like, hey, I want to do science. I want to do things. I want to think things. I want to do what I came here to. You came here to talk about me. Why? Okay, I have the money. I don't have the why me? Okay, that's gonna be a little bit of this Mercury issue for you. Yeah, I started talking about abolishing expandable children. Okay, so it's going to be like a fated type of crusade. Then let's see what Mercury will go through again in Aries. Here we go, and here we are already in May. So we are after the eclipses, still in the shade. They're going to be active for like a year onwards. And May 15 will be the ingress to Taurus. But before this, we're going to have May 7, again a conjunction with Chiron. And this is going to be on the 21 degree of Aries. Okay, so Mercury is doing things in Aries. It is, and the Chiron is prominent, is strong. You might want to learn. Maybe you want to purchase or take a course about Chiron. But there are also going to be new Chiron teachings because Chiron is conjuncting Rahu now. So maybe what you've learned in the past is not so relevant. Maybe there are going to be new courses, new workshops, new views of Chiron. Mercury, maybe you want to develop something to do with Chiron, like a skill. Okay? Chiron is where the wound is. Then you have later a teaching. So you want to be considering that. And that's it. It's enough, right? It's a lot. It's going to be conjuncting Rahu, conjuncting Chiron, conjuncting Aries. Okay. Mercury conjuncting Aries. Again, it happens every year. Aries is the one who's not been invited, and we are taking our fury and building it into something that can be a bit of a discord. So this is where, some people might enjoy getting the people who are not inviting them into a bit of a chaos. But you have to understand that Aries is in everyone's chart, and even if you don't have a personal planet around Aries, it doesn't mean that you don't have an Aries part in you. Okay, of course, with some people it's more evident than with others. Aries was the one that's not included, and isolation is undesired. Loneliness is undesired. It's one of the greatest ones, causing to addictions and plenty of like horrid stuff. So Mercury, Aries will be addressing that on conjunction. Then we have the Chiron, which we said, so Chiron 1, and then we have the eclipse, and then we have the retrograde, then we have Chiron 2. Okay, we have Venus, and then we have Chiron 2. Have an almost meeting with Rahu, but then going backwards. And this is very intense period that adjoins wounds, identity, and wounds around identity are both caused by great traumas. I want to just put it out there. It's not about scaring anybody. I'm just wounds around identities are caused around great traumas. A great trauma can simply be like the natal Chiron. There was an aspect about you that the parent rejected. Okay? It can be the most simple thing in the world. Yes? I'm not going to tell. I know a part of what this means for me, and it expresses in certain ones I have around language. But so it can be the most simple thing in the world. It can be more complicated, and so I'm not saying that, God forbid, it's going to have a serious trauma that creates a Chiron wound here. It's more like addressing this on a mundane level, yes. With eclipses, Chiron with eclipses is a bit nuclear. So I don't know. It's not in my place to predict that type of stuff. But what I can say to you is that Chiron, mundane event, Chiron related, are timestamp of 50 years. So think about stuff that are not exposed for 50 years, trying to, 50 years that you kind of classified. And those things that we absolutely don't like. This is happening on eclipse, the April 8 eclipse. It's there. It's there. And it's affecting the United States and affecting the chart of the royal family Netherlands and the chart of Mr. Geert Wilders himself around this Jupiter, whatever this Jupiter is for him. So it's there, it's fated, it's and we'll hope that as I don't know, will be remedied in some way as much as possible. So any go-tos when it comes, now that I described the sky, okay, kind of this is the sky. Now anything that I would turn to magically around this. So first, right now Mars is conjuncting Deneb Algadi. It's a good time to do a little bit of reverence for Deneb Algadi. Deneb Algadi, the wealth redistributor, Deneb Algadi, the protector of those who are outcast from society. Okay, and not only that, this Mars is sextiling Aries, which it rules. Now Mars is a hot planet. It's not like a Jupiter or a Venus. It's not. It's also not the Moon. So I'm not saying like create a talisman, but definitely turning to Deneb Algadi can be very useful. Petitioning or donation stuff related to those who are in need, it can be very useful. If you don't know how to donate to a place and know that it reaches the place, you can try to do a divination on this, or you can try and donate maybe a small amount and say, I set the intention to point the wealth in the direction of where it's needed and receive the omens that are going to come to you. Okay, so if you did like a mistake around that, it's going to help you invest better and for the investment to actually reach the people. With the Aries place, well, there is Andromeda constellation. Okay, this entire thing is taking place in Andromeda constellation in Aries. Andromeda is associated with, if we turn to her magically, okay, not on a mundane level, if we turn to her magically, she's associated with releasing kidnapped people, releasing people from torture. Mercury's children, so releasing children that are in projects like Expandable Children, releasing kidnapped children, those that we know of and those we don't even know where they are. So Andromeda is also known to have connection with reconciliation. Okay, and so we talk about going and turning to Andromeda, okay, to ask to release, and also if I don't know if there are hostages, families listening from anywhere. There are hostages that you know, and that there are kidnapped children that you don't know. And it's not necessarily around this war. It can be many things like expendable children projects, and so turning to Andromeda and asking to release those children that are in captivity. That can be, and not just release, but also to include them in society, and to change society, to include them. This is where Deneb Algadi can be of use. So this sextile between Aries in Andromeda constellation and Deneb Algadi, magnificent to turn to tackle these issues. And our core issues. Andromeda is very good for reconciliation. On a personal level, it's going to be a very ecliptic eclipse around like exes and stuff like that. So if it was issues of like cheatings or betrayal, then I take it by Christopher Warnock that Andromeda talismans are very good for reconciliation. Okay? Andromeda constellation talismans are excellent for reconciliation, even in cases where there were cheating or unfaithfulness. You say, Shirley, why would I want to do that? I don't know. Beyonce did that with Jay-Z. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just telling you that those are a part of the signification you would use Andromeda for. And sometimes reconciliation is not together. Maybe seeing a perspective from a different point of view, and that's helping in those things. Andromeda she was kidnapped and tied to be tortured, and then was saved and released. So this is kind of like a damsel in distress, but on a mundane level, it does signify events around kidnapping of children, hopefully on the releasing, hopefully on the raising awareness. This is why tackling things like expandable children and the kidnapping of children of all sorts of things, okay, whether in what is masqueraded as medical experiments, as medical warfare, but it's, in essence, it's expandable children. This is so important because if we tend to the core issue, then we have a chance for true reconciliation, for truly working on humanity level. And this, of course, will expose, is still addressing, Pluto's in Aquarius at this time, but in September it's going back to Capricorn to finish the exposure of the hierarchies, the hidden hierarchies, and then going to Aquarius for good. So expandable children is the core of the elite and the wealth, upper echelons. And that is something that perhaps will come into the discourse, and very fatedly so. And this is important, but we also understand that when these things pop up, then immediately there are going to be attempts to divert the public opinion so that we wouldn't notice, so we wouldn't see. Use of media to divert the attention, or use of media to kind of talk about identity and identity and identity. Yeah, I take like an example from the inspiration of Angela Summer in Mubiru, when she talks about the tribe that she's coming from and the things that she talks about that happen to women. It's not about her denouncing her tribe. It's about acknowledging that, yes, women are preserving the ancestral lineage and wisdom, but also the dreams of women are important. So not all something to change in our lineage, or in our, tribal society or nationality, if you're a patriot, or world. Okay, you don't have to be a globalist to say world, or citizen of the world. Half Dutch, so the word citizen of the word sparks in me a lot greater things than nationalism. But I don't negate nationalism, it's just preferences. And the fact that the relation to women in tribal society needs to change is important. It's the same with expandable children. Okay? It doesn't negate your being loving to your nation, to your tribe, to your community, to your religion, or to your lack of religion, which is highly important as well. It is about that these things need to change in favor of entire society, and you cannot identity that away. Okay, you cannot say that speaking about that, you're speaking against the tribe, the state, the family, and so on and so forth. Okay. No, this needs to change. We don't want to be a match to colonialism or a match to fundamentalism. We talk about, Muhammad with the 6 years old Aisha. We must talk about expandable children and abolish this practice, because this is where we are becoming a match to these Muhammads with the 6 years old Aisha. Okay, and then we can abolish that and then give the right of exit, and people will definitely come to exit that. But to paint the picture as though we are this enlightened society where those things don't happen by us, is gaslighting ourselves eventually, because this is not going to negate fundamentalism. If we take everybody out of the border, okay, everybody out. Well, the good thing about that is that you're going to have to deal with what is in. And also, if God forbid comes like a war, a religious war, which unfortunately can be here with this one, then people are gonna like, where is this coming from? Where are these crazy people coming from? This is like, the expandable children practice is a match to these things. And so if there are many people in your own nation that would prefer death to what they're going through right now, there's a hell of a lot of people you don't know about that are manifesting death. Okay, so it's just like, hey, hold the frequency. And so that's what's up. Very intense times and very pivotal times. But also, we have people to look to. Okay, we have Nelson Mandela. We have the women like Angela Samanamuvira and African women that talk about the changes that are happening in their own society right now. We are not post those changes. If we get that, then it's not like we're heading somewhere and we don't have anywhere to rely on. We haven't been there before. They have. So this is where, who would you listen to? The person who talks about the oppressors, the colonizer, the this, the that, but his wife is sitting in the kitchen and he is, running like a king and she is like a servant? Or would you listen to the person that goes beyond colonialism and says, hey, that those things need to change in our society, and those things we are meeting as equals when it comes to these types of exploitation, and when we address that, then we raise the bar instead of lowering it in our encounter with other civil societies. Okay, so I know what my choice is when it comes to tackling those things. It doesn't mean not to set boundaries to behavior undesired from other societies, but definitely not to neglect the society within. And, we do have figures that dealt with those things. We have Anneke that talks about her own experiences being an expandable child and surviving that. So hours of discussion that whenever it's fated for you to listen or is calling for you to listen, it is going to be very useful. And we have people who have exited fundamentalist religions, so whether it's Islam or other cults, then they have their voices. For example, I did not know that in Iran pre-1979, the socialists were united with the fundamentalist religion, and later, of course, the socialists were killed, and then that was the religious 1979 in Iran that we're still dealing with today. So I did not know this until I heard women who survived this, talk about this. And it's so very relevant to seeing what we are seeing today in alliances between leftists and fundamentalist religion. They're like, what are these gays doing with this, what are they doing together? It's kind of like these two, it's not even these two bitches that hate you. It's like, what, you didn't even think you have a quarrel with, like queer people or anything like that. Like, what are you guys doing together? And then it's like, yeah, don't you know you're gonna get killed after like they're done with you? And that's what's up. But this can also be, denoted to other types of calling to more far right wing callings in Europe. Like, oh, we are against them, and then like, there can be other groups that are suddenly against, and this is something we need to kind of like to put on the table. Yes, so and this is where anything to do with Aries in Aries is about going beyond the veil of ignorance. It's about going beyond identities. Okay? What is this issue at the core? And you will find the answer. Okay? Either we exclude people that are looking different to us in a way that's not exotic and relatable, or we practice stuff like, expandable children. It's very relevant now with this Mercury. Or we, or that there is a, kind of like a core issue, the use of psychiatry to define the normal and abnormal political entity or political relation and identification. And those are core issues. Okay? Naming a state, naming even a person, naming a religion is not a core issue. Saying religious and philosophical, whether it's religion or atheism, now we are at the core issue. Now, what is the thing? Exploitation of children, let's abolish expandable children. So that is a part of where it's going. And here, because it's eclipse related, I predict that the themes that will come up will be intergenerational. Yes, with Neptune involved. Anyway, thank you for watching.